Revelation 7, Theology of the Lost Tribes. This link above represents the very common evangelical and even Laodicean idea about the lost tribes of Israel, because they are those who apparently comport fully to the literal 12 times tribal ethnicity of Revelation 7, and therefore are the 144,000. This discussion will be of interest to those who squander the essential doctrine of Christ concerning John 4:22 and the 144. Then I heard how many people received God's seal. The number of people was 144,000. They came from all the tribes of Israel's people. 12,000 from Judah's tribe, Reuben, Gad, Asher's, Naphtali, Manasseh's, Simeon, Levi's, Issachar's, Zebulun, Joseph's, and Benjamin's. The idea in the video is, as they say, and most of you well know, that these 12 tribes, by the recognition of the naming conventions applied from the patriarchs, is God's A-list, and therefore because they are naming the tribes, therefore they equals the long-lost tribes, and for that purpose. In addition, as to what authenticates the A-list is the example of the genetical, cultural bloodline equals the lost tribe of Manasseh. And yeah, were visited by missionaries. Well, they didn't accept the foreign religion, the Christian missionaries, meaning they would return to Japhet, unbelieving. That is the pattern of the literal bloodline story. If any of these will fall into line in respect to the Bible's prophetic time clock, Matthew 20, Revelation 18 declares a decision is required now and certainly necessary at the loud cry, Revelation 18, 1-5. The Revelation 18 cry that is conveyed with great power. But then, is there the possibility all the lost tribes taking up the call of heaven to come out of her, my people? There are some who claim the sealing of Revelation 7 will be available in the time frame of the two witnesses, the 1260 days of Revelation 11. The latter suggestion is a moot idea. Talking about moot ideas, those who are fond of the literal 12 tribal conclusion of Revelation 7 equals literal bloodlines, right? Well, there's something to be aware of. Yeah, problem. Where genetics plays a large part in the attempts to establish biological tribal affiliations with Y chromosome haplogroups, subclads, and haplotypes. It is easily seen the preponderances of literal bloodline requires optimal purity, and as can be seen, does not exist in the genome data. This means most of the theology of Revelation 7 will remain subjective, highly sentimental for the messianic fervor. But the literal tribal bloodline evidence is fading, because from the evidence, a convincing conclusion is not possible due to the tribal integration with other peoples and various populaces over many centuries due to the ebb and flow of time. What appears to be the logical evidence available today is now esteemed value of lost tribal, but more along the lines of a long-lived cultural purity. And this is acknowledged by the higher rabbinic courts because a proven cultural existence demonstrated by a long tradition of Hebraic theological purity, Sabbath, the Ten Commandments of Moses, the Talmud, and dietary norms. And so it confirms a necessary consistency. This is case in point with Benai Menashe in the video and those guys who prove their ancestral associations over long stretches of time. And yes, that counts as good. But how does he who made see that viewpoint, especially after what he stated in Matthew 23:38? Okay, so what does the haplogroups and genomic statistical data indicate? It's a weak datum set to accommodate the literal bloodline application of 12 literal tribes. That, Revelation 7, and therefore makes that likelihood incomplete, if not impossible, to demonstrate. It seems also pertinent that the Japhet group know a lot about the book of Christian Revelation and the 12 tribes of Revelation 7 as well. So who of you can explain why all of a sudden the literal lost tribe bloodlines actually reflect Revelation 7:4-8, and therefore true, when the Japhet guys do not recognize the Bible, let alone Jesus Christ as Messiah? Okay, here's another question. How does he who made answer the lost tribes of Revelation 7 conundrum? The parable of the new vineyard. New vineyard, parabolic time clock, and olive tree, rich root. It is to be noted, he who made himself, who presented to the dull of hearing the prophetic time clock and the new vineyard of 12 noon, 3 p.m., 5 p.m., and retains the true olive tree with the rich root, read the farmer's tree, Romans 11:16-18. So now comes to you the doozy of a problem. How do you establish an accurate and thorough 12 tribe account and build out the necessary theology concerning Revelation 7, with the literal bloodlines in the new vineyard? And then take the next step as to what must occur when it comes to the seal of God in the closing work for the church in the sealing time, and which is fully fundamental and illustrates the true essence to the theological domain of Revelation 7 and the Day of Atonement cleansing and sealing, which is, in fact, it has to be repeated once again and must be repeated for those with poor eyesight. It is John 4:22. Establishes the dictum of Daniel 8:14 and the heavenly sanctuary and the Day of Atonement and also the final atonement. So how do you establish an accurate, thorough 12 tribe account and build out the necessary theology concerning Revelation 7? Well, here it is. One must fully trust he who made. He declared a literal, emphatic divine decree against exactly who? In Matthew 23:38. How large was the house? All 12 tribes? How then is that the divine decree by he who made framed the basis of the original errors and must include any and all future divine considerations of the new vineyard and in the last generation of those who will and who won't stand on Mount Zion per Revelation 14:1, Revelation 7? Which for clarity's sake you are reminded, he who made said it is one of the 7 churches have a strange experience because the synagogue of Satan worshiped the feet of the Phillies, Revelation 3. Does that portion of detail about the Phillies not confirm Matthew 23:38? Behold, your house is left unto you desolate, right? But again, why would Sister White talk about closing work for the church and the sealing time of 144 when there are theological claims for the literal bloodlines of the lost 12 tribes? But then the other problem for Laodiceans is no commentary by her exists for Revelation 7:4-8. The only way to resolve the enigma of the 12 named tribes comes down to John 4:22 and the prevailing divine principle of the sanctuary doctrine, and only that establishes the antitypical fulfillment of Leviticus 16 and the Day of Atonement, and yes, the seal of God. Okay, then, that being the case, because Revelation 7, it's all based on Daniel 8:14, does not Matthew 23:38 mean what it says, that the literal bloodline tribes of the house are all declared desolate? Meaning the tribes of the Old Covenant house cannot constitute those literal tribes of Revelation 7? Well, it's easy to confirm the answer. Paul was given the light of John 4:22, and it is illustrated in the book of Hebrews and includes the cleansing of the sanctuary, Hebrews 9, because Paul well knew the details of Daniel 8:13-14 applied to John 4:22. But get this, Laodicea was born of prophecy, and the dictum of John 4:22, Daniel 8:14, prevails in every aspect of Revelation 7, which means Benai, Menashe in the flesh are not one of the spiritual tribes of Manasseh. Same be the case for all literal blood lineages and claims. Also, the chaste woman in respect to the prophetic interlocutory of Revelation 7:12, Revelation 12, exists to confirm other things than a literal tribal affiliations of Revelation 7 and as was established Revelation 12. This chapter, as previously discussed here, shows how. God delineates the facts of the transgression of desolation, Daniel 8:13, and the events of the abomination of desolation, Matthew 24:50. omits the beasts from Daniel 7 and includes the beasts, Revelation 13 and 17. Now back to the two witnesses of Revelation 11 and the possibility of literal tribes falling into line. Fact is, it's too late by the time frame of the 1290 days of Matthew 24:15 for anything such as the seal of God, Ezekiel 9, which was in the prior sealing time of the 144. Why? You are deep into the time of the second woe. Why? Events leading up to Revelation 9:12 are long gone. One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. Also, the guy of the second woe includes the 2 Thessalonians 2 guy, noted in Isaiah 2. 2 Thessalonians 2 guy and the lost tribes. So who is to say is that the 2 Thessalonians 2 guy will not establish a literal lost tribe bloodline, accreditation, or the culture Hebraic orthodoxy policy as a keynote objective? Well, it's relatable to Zechariah 8:23. Why? To build out the third temple enterprise of real ancestral stock back to Jacob as those who held to the law of Moses, which for the 2 Thessalonians 2 guy means hosting and elevating literal bloodline stock, because all pertinent authentication was the long-held heritage, and that brings much authority and legitimacy for a third temple and what the 10 men say. That 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. We know God is with you, right? But would the eighth king ever adopt what Paul explained about the rootstock and the branches in Romans 11? Hardly. Paul, as loathed, reviled, despised by the Japhet guys. Okay, so would you prefer to consider another anomaly? What would the two witnesses say to the Thessalonians guy about his global recognition by the 10 kings, and with that of sort of prestige that goes with the third temple? Keep in mind, Daniel said the eighth king has much power. Huh? Would that be the two witnesses say at that juncture? Anyone who can be bothered can read the account in Revelation 11. Guess what happens? The two witness antipathy was extremely strong, that after 3.5 days everyone gave presents to each other, but to then he beholden and dreaded fear. Conclusion. Would not the two witnesses refer to he who made and the first angel's warning? Worship him that made, and of course fully attest why he is the Alpha and the Omega? Even though a small enclave like B'nai Menashe are genuine, would they not be fully upbeat about first angel's warning of Revelation 14? If that was the case, why would they wish to head over to the third temple? Back to Revelation 12. The flight into the wilderness, Revelation 12:6, was the era of the transgression of desolation, 1260 years, commencing with the first of the 5 fallen kings of Revelation 17 and 554 AD under Justinian. God said in Revelation 17, 5 have fallen, right? Did not God take the scales off Paul's eyes to go to tribes, being of the tribe of Benjamin, and take the gospel to the Gentiles? How are Gentiles viewed by the Japhet guys at the time of the 7 Noahides? Of course, you know the answer. A gospel to meet many obstacles, such as the era of the 5 fallen kings on the increments of the prophetic time clock? Yes, the gospel that encountered the transgression of desolation of the beast that was not. And so, during that long era, the transgression of deaths, there would exist the lost Hebrew cultural enclaves, like fully assimilated religiously, culturally, in other places around the earth, even areas far removed from the persecution by the fourth beast or the scarlet beast, nor stomped over in the long era of the transgression of desolation, Daniel 8:13, only to be later tallied up and foiled in the colonial area. But again, regardless of the endless possibilities, you can never omit he who made's decree of Matthew 23:38. The scarlet woman and the beast were busy with business and led to the heirs of the crypto, the conversos, the morenos. What occurred demographically? The loss or even eradication of the indentured literal tribes with the pressures of the Inquisition and the Holy Roman Empire. Just say the enclaves were genuine and have a role in the sealing time of the 144. Then should they not acknowledge the true Messiah, he who made, and Christ had also faced the sin head run guys over the one God, 7 Noahide laws in Matthew 26. Christ died according to Isaiah 53, and therefore, concerning the enclaves, you would think they would be wanton to disregard the doctrines of the Thessalonians guy, come hell or high water, prior to the events of the 1260 literal days of the first beast of Revelation 13. And you have Revelation 13:8-9 to review and really consider its purpose with regards to the Alpha and Omega of He who made, and why this text is situated between the two beasts at the end of the 1260 and the plus 30 of the 1290 days of Revelation 13. The calling becomes so focused. If any man hear, 13:9. It's a divine calling to anyone. Yes, that one last awareness about the first angel's warning and the importance of the preeminence of eternal righteousness, Colossians 1:16-20. Verily, eternal righteousness by faith is that divine authority to fortify the 144. Would the lost tribes desire to establish and respond to He who made's last call in the sealing time? Nothing is impossible in a very short time frame, but is it plausible? Well, for one obvious thing, the 144 are a very small number. The common interpretation of Revelation 7 is a literal blood lineage. But as you encountered earlier, the haplogenome DNA configurations and indicators are one thing, but a lot of uncertain research exists. But here's the thing for any tribal subclave familiar with the sanctuary service of Exodus 25:8 and Leviticus 16 is what God establishes on the Day of Atonement. John 4:22, Daniel 8:14, and especially for the 144,000. What God establishes in the final atonement is twofold. One, the cleansing, Isaiah 6, and then, two, the sealing, Revelation 7, shut door and fully closed out by trumpet number 5, since one woe is past. Read Revelation 9, 1-12. The sealing includes the key of David at that time, but of the 7 churches, this is given to the Phillies. Read Revelation 3, 7-13. And following the seal of God, then commences the 2 witness testimony, 1260 literal days. Read Revelation 11, 2-3 and 14. After all, because Laodicea were born of prophecy at the end of the transgression of desolation, after 1844, right? Then here is the reality. The vast theology of John 4:22 is fully integrated with what seems to be the theology of Revelation 7. And then, that being the case, it always gets back to Laodicea and the 7 churches, and especially what she set out in 3T and 5T. Why? Laodicea was born and raised from prophecy, raised to ready a people for the time He who made called the abomination of desolation is spoken by Daniel the prophet, Matthew 24:15. To speak accurately to the first angel's warning, which is not the Sabbath, and also every Laodicean must realize the seal of God is not the Sabbath. And therefore, the closing work today is to respond now to the call to get out of Laodicea and save your life from the reward, Alpha and Omega of deadly heresies, literally saved from the horrors of that reward. Why? Because those who are wise virgins recognize on the Day of Atonement there is a cleansing prior to the seal of God, which will mean their lips of clay are cleansed by the coals from off the altar, Isaiah 6, and no longer speak rubbish. Cleansed from the heinous God, the eternal Son, fundamental number 4, Omega of deadly heresies. Cleanse lips from the triune trinity of the purple woman, and keep in mind, God holds full hostility this woman and her daughters because she holds the denial to the 2 divines of John 1:1, which means absolutely no Revelation 7 sealing under those circumstances. And further, God said there must be a cleansing and atonement for what is a great transgression against He who made, and therefore on the Day of Atonement, that awareness about the Alpha and Omega of deadly heresies, one acknowledge and fully repent, and only then one's lips will be cleansed. Bar of soap. For those old enough, mother washed your mouth out with soap. For what? Lying, right? In this case of the cleansing of Isaiah 6 on the Day of Atonement, it's not as drastic as mother, but the eternal repercussions for not engrossing the whole mind and the entire attention in the sealing time. Let's say, for now, the outcome is far worse than the mother. It's a shocker. Fuller's soap. The other illustration of cleansing is being fully chastised. Refiner's fire, like a bar of Fuller's soap. Malachi 3:2. But who can abide the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like fuller's soap. Those who shall stand, Malachi 3:2, Revelation 6:17, are the 144. Then be it better that one's mouth ceases prating the relentless ignorance, which is the endless lying about he who made and his eternal righteousness, and why he is Alpha and Omega. Right? Why? For starters, it is very obvious when speaking to the padres, elders, and laity in Laodicea that the cleansing from the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies is Fundamentals 2 and 4. It is extremely difficult, leaving them unable to make a decision from the Bible, let alone to even be bothered to make the necessary efforts to resolve the Alpha and Omega of deadly heresies. And what happens? They all continue to speak guile, unable to provide an accurate awareness of the Godhead and the implications to the first angel. For those listening, convicted of accuracy about the first angel and the horrors of the reward for the Alpha and Omega of deadly heresies, yes, it is in reality a painful process to depart Laodicea. Matthew 7:14. Some, the few, recognize it's better to recognize God than getting placed on the horns of a dilemma. Should I stay in Laodicea or must I depart? If you choose to remain, how difficult it will be to make a decision at the time of the loud cry, Revelation 18, just after the destruction of the Vatican City. Why? God said the Vatican City is destroyed utterly by the 10 kings in 1 hour. What then do you do with a destroyed Roman Catholic Church and all of its doctrines? Abandon everything about it? Right? Have to include Fundamentals 2 and 4, the central doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church that has been destroyed, Revelation 17:16. Right? What you are left with then, the time of the loud cry, Revelation 18, is the tragic legacy of Laodicea, the foolish reject. The first angel. Don't believe the loud cry of Revelation 18 because the message is not about the Sabbath, right? Today, when one gains the necessary insights of the deadlines of the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies, you must depart. What's at stake? The seal of God. Or remain with comforts of being lukewarm, assuming you have the seal of God, which is apparently the Sabbath. Well, that notion is totally debunked with Revelation 3:12 and Revelation 14:1. Right? But then today, when this issue about the seal of God is addressed, you have to deal with the appalling look of you are lost from the elders and the padres of Laodicea, whereas their major problem is with God over the warning about the Omega of deadly heresies that she provided over the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies, Fundamentals 2 and 4, which is all the same as the doctrine of Mystery Babylon, Mother of Harlots. It's the purple woman's central doctrine. But many turn away and to allay the anxiety and tension that's building up to make a decision. So what would Paul say today? You are meant to be a pillar and ground of truth. 1 Timothy 3:13. The Omega of deadly heresies is not truth. God could never reconcile the Alpha and the Omega of deadly heresies as being a pillar and ground of truth, let alone to be sealed by that, according to Revelation 7. No way. Why? God said when describing the Phillies, him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God. That pillar entails the truth about the seal of God and the sealing time. Phillies. Are you still in doubt? Read Revelation 3:12. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God. And I will write upon him my new name. So then, about the rationale of cleansed, it would be superfluous to say the lost tribes would not know about Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the ministration of the high priest on the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 16 and the cleansing, of Ezekiel 9 and the final atonement. In respect to Revelation 7 and the antitypical seal of God, God said no guile is the divine rule, cleansed from unbelief about the first angel's warning about he who made. That includes non-denial of his eternal righteousness, and the non-denial that he was also God, John 1:1. But then the tragedy is insisting he who made is God the eternal Son. Fundamental 4, and denying he who made as the Alpha and the Omega, Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world, Revelation 22:13 and 16. John 1:1 proves his eternal status. It is also the basis of the divine authority of what seals the 144 in the sealing time. For cleansing is required prior to the seal of God, and cleansing means to depart from the hive mind of Laodicea with their fundamentals 2 and 4. At this time, one truly needs the coal from off the altar in heaven, not from the pulpit and mentoring of Laodicea about God. And yeah, that sears the tongue, the lips, to be continuing in guile. 1 Timothy 4:2. Speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience foreheads seared with a hot iron. But to be cleansed, to speak truth about the first angel, he who made. John 1:1, Alpha and Omega, Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world. Revelation 13, etc. For what? Simple. To be cleansed from the unbelievable, insidious Alpha and Omega deadly heresies, triune Trinity doctrine, fundamental 2, God the eternal Son, fundamental 4. But only to then one can begin to see the eternal glory of he who made, who was also God from eternity. His eternal identity, everlasting Father. Number 2, Isaiah 9:6-7. Eternal righteousness, he who made, first angel's warning. Getting back to the lost tribes falling into line at one time of the two witnesses. It's too late by the time frame of the 1260 literal days, the first beast of Revelation 13. It's the same time frame of Revelation 11. And forget then about anything like the seal of God of Revelation 7. Of course, and even if there exist literal tribes of Israel, it doesn't mean anything. Why? Since the new vineyard of Matthew 20 dictates that it's the 5 p.m. workers that are sealed. Read Matthew 26-9. The 5 p.m. workers are the sealed teachers of righteousness, and the rest are the students or the holy. That statement about the Christian missionaries that preached to the lost tribe of B'nai Manasseh in India is a taste of things to come. As prophetic time moves to the events of Isaiah 2, there will be the renewed pride of restoration and emphasis on the law. Those lost tribe guys will not easily come to Christ unless it's a miracle of he who made, like when Vatican City takes its fall, Revelation 17:16. Then the last opportunity to hear and respond is to the loud cry. All will be the case for Laodicea and all others. The tertiary level of Revelation 11. Then there is a tertiary level concerning the vast theology details of Revelation 7, which is the time frame of the Thessalonians guide and the 1290 days of the abomination of desolation, Matthew 24:15. When the rubber meets the theological pavement, and what is this tertiary level? The rod. Contrary to what is stated by Satan, the fact is the 144 will refuse to come under the rod. The rod is the tertiary level. Read Ezekiel 20:37. And I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. Read Revelation 12:11. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. The rod of the eighth king undoubtedly exists during the 1260 and the plus 30 days of the 1290 of Revelation 13, and will be a major delusion into the world. It will seem like the tribes are restored. The rod effectuated upon what the eighth king calls impostors. The great multitude in 144? The rod effect? Yeah, it's noted clearly in Daniel 8:23-25. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up, and his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many, and he shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. But when all is said and done, the main issue is still the first angel's warning. Years ago, Benny Hinn was trying to fulfill the literalness of Revelation 7 prophecy by flying in people from places, either Russia or Ethiopia. And if B'nai Manasseh are genuine, then it's the recognition of the first angel. And as we can see, that they see their birthright is currently following the one God of the world, which is against the first angel's warning, and leading themselves to the adoption of the 7 Noahides at the Third Temple Enterprise. In fact, no one these days understands the reason as to why the second beast is linked with Japhet. That is the reason. Third Temple. and 7 Noahides. The global mega network is all linked under the table, and the rest is theater for the world. But as mentioned, Paul was given insights about John 4:22, and this is cited with his concise treatise concerning the heavenly and its cleansing in Hebrews 9, 8, 9, 10, Daniel 8, 13 to 14. And further, because Laodicea was born of prophecy at the time of 3 p.m., and Laodicea are certainly not along the lines of the Benai Menashe bloodline, 12 archetypes, who are said to be indicators of the lost tribes, and therefore not the literal 144, because, as is commonly believed, are a literal example of the lost tribes, and that's a problem. Why? Because of the details provided by he who made in the parable of the new vineyard. Has not anyone realized the restored 12 tribes of the flesh equals the old covenant, and not part of the new vineyard? Right? Fact is, it's the old workers of the old vineyard being guided to return by the illegal tenants that wanted to keep the vineyard for themselves by killing the heir. They did. Hence Matthew 23:38, Daniel 9:27. Right? The restoration is not tribal of flesh. It's based on truth. And at the appointed time of the workers on the parabolic time clock, 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 and 3 p.m., and 5 p.m. Each prophetic time mentioned by Jesus was a true restoration in the new vineyard, whereas the restoration of the 10 lost tribes is inherently linked with Third Temple restoration. The restorations, however, of the new vineyard culminates in the key of David and New Jerusalem, and the seal of two fathers, Revelation 14:1. The question is this: how do the designations of the sealed of different lost tribes fall into the primary framework of the new vineyard? The only answer is that there is an antitypical application of the antitypical 12 tribes as to regarding those who are sealed with the seal of God. And therefore, the matter is not in relation to the typical, which is fleshly descendants, but to an antitypical application that gathers these antitypical tribes that Paul said equals the commonwealth of Israel, Ephesians 2:12. They are those who respond, give testimony of the first angel's message, and keep in mind the Sabbath is not the seal of God. Then the loud cry of Revelation 18:1-5 has to be part of the fulfillment of the true restoration. The false restoration will probably be brought about by the ensign or seventh king, as dictated by the false prophetess Celestial. She stated that the ensign was not the beast. So who then is he, if he has that so-called messianic authority, ensign of David? And after the fall of the seventh king, deadly wound, comes the interim period of the true restoration and the final sealing. What would have to be noted are the crimes against heaven of the purple woman, filling her golden cup to its double against heaven, and her endless harlotry, and same of her daughters, such as Laodicea, who adopted fundamentals 2:4 and persisted in the attack on the first angel, and that is also inherently linked with the warning of the third angel. Ultimately speaking, the message of the first angel, as well as the third, highlights the witness of the two witnesses, and they both attest to the first angel in the form of witnessing the transfiguration and later Calvary in the great city. Read Revelation 11. This also involves the work of the witness of eternal righteousness. Why? John 17, I desire that they also whom thou hast given me be with me where I am, and that they may behold my glory, which thou hast given me, for thou lovest me before the foundation of the world. Moses and Elijah beheld that glory. It's a reciprocal thing. How? He who made the Omega, eternal number 2, he glorifies the Alpha on earth, and then, in turn, eternal number 1 glorifies the Alpha of eternal 2. And later, this essential fact is confirmed in Revelation 19. The Word restored. His name is the Word. The Lamb's status as being prior to David is also restored in Revelation 22:1 and 2. Order of Melchizedek. Jesus confirmed this when he stated, before Abraham, I am. The first angel has been 100% confirmed. The testimony of the two witnesses equals the Father glorifying Jesus Christ as eternal number 2, former glory. John 17:5. And now, O Father, glorify thou me with thine own self, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was. And then the word places himself under the authority of eternal number one as all in all. Read 1 Corinthians 15:28. And when all things shall be subdued unto him, then shall the Son also himself be subject unto him that put all things under him, that God may be all in all. Here is a question. Is it that the 144, the sealed 144, sealed by the man in linen, is it that they not only perceive that form of glory as seen by Isaiah, but also see that Isaiah saw, which was the glory of he who made eternal righteousness? Eternal righteousness, that eternal righteousness is seen by faith by the 144. Eternal righteousness by faith in its entire association. But the fact is that the former glory of he who made has everything and all to do with Christ and his eternal righteousness, which is the first angel and third angel in verity. Answer? Yes. What else is the answer? There is no other answer.